Hello, welcome back. Today we have a project we are going to start. It is the first of the year and well, we're already getting close to Valentine's Day, so we are going to make a door hanger for our front door of the shop. We typically hang a door hanger on the front of the shop and it pretty much lets people know we're open. I mean, we have our regular set hours, but when we have that door hanger on, everybody knows we're there. When that door hanger's not there, they always come in and say, we didn't know if you were open. So pretty much it symbolizes whether we're open or closed. What we're gonna do today is make a new one. February is coming up fast, so we need to put one up there pretty quick. So that's what we're gonna work on today. We have recently done videos like the crazy quilt paper and the Christmas tree paper, and well, they have a heart paper. So that's what we're gonna work on today. We're gonna make the door hanger out of these hearts. You can make it into a quilt like the back of the package shows you by using this whole pack. We're not gonna use the whole pack, we're just gonna use a sheet or two. So that's what we're starting with. Here is one paper and it shows you on here where to cut. So you'll cut here first where it says cut here first, cut here second, cut here third. And so that's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna bring you down to the table so you can see what I'm doing. I've already got my fabrics cut. You can use, this paper is designed, if you're using the whole quilt top, to use if you're making a whole quilt top, to use a layer cake. I didn't have a layer cake that I wanted to make my door hanger out of. So what I've done is I've taken some fabrics that we had in the shop and I've cut them into 10-inch squares, which is a layer cake. A 10-inch square is a layer cake. You need 42 for this quilt top, but for my door hanger, all I need is 4 hearts. I'm just gonna do 4 hearts straight down and that'll be my door hanger. So I've got my fabrics cut and I've got them coordinating how I wanted to for each heart. And now let's get started. Your first step to these is to pick 2 coordinating prints. So this will be the heart and this will be the background. And for the next one, this will be the heart and this will be the background. So I've got my 2 coordinating prints. I will stack them up right sides together, and then I'll take a paper and I'll flip them over and iron it to this side of my fabric. I'll take these 2, I'll take the paper, 1 piece of paper, and I'll iron this paper onto the back of one of the pieces of fabric. Once that's adhered to, I'll flip it to the side with the pattern up, and then I'll cut it just like it tells me to cut it. So for this one, it says cut here first. So I'm going to, let me stand up for this one. I'll line my ruler up on that line, and I'll cut down that line. Then I'll see where it says cut second, cut second, cut second. So I'll cut this diagonal line. And I'll come over here and I'll cut this diagonal line. And now I've got it like this. Once I've got it like this, I'll pull these up a little bit to get them out of my way. And then I'm going to cut down these other lines. So I'll cut right here. And there. And there. And the last cut is right here. Then I'll put them back in place. They're all cut apart, but they're all in place. So this is going to be my heart. What I'll do is I'll peel this off now. It doesn't leave a residue or anything. It just peels right off. And I'm going to leave the heart section paper to show you that that is the heart. Now there's my pieces. This all right here is going to be my background. This is going to be my heart. So when I put it back together, this heart section right here, the L1 and the R1, I want it to be the opposite fabric of all the other pieces. So here, let me get my ruler out of my way. So here's my heart. Now I'm going to flip them over. And just flip sides so that it works out right. And there it is. For this one, I'll take these two out and I'll sew the tops of these with these. So to start sewing it, I'm going to take this piece to this piece. So I'll take this piece up here, which was L2, and I'll sew it to L1, right like that, 1/4 inch seam right here. Let me turn you so you can see it a little bit better. Once I sew that, I'm going to iron it open. And then I'm going to put it back in place. I'll do the same thing with this side. Lay it down just like that. They start out with 10-inch squares, but once you cut it down, the pattern says to cut it down to 7.5 inches. We are going to cut it as big as we can. Depending what that is, we'll see at the end. But you'll go as big as you can according to the smallest block. So if your smallest block is 7.5, then you're all 7.5. If your smallest block ends up to be 7 3/4, then stop at that. You don't want to cut any excess away that you don't have to. So that's why I say that. So you got these. Now I'm going to sew these to these. So I'll take this piece and it lines up right there. So I'll flip it right side together and I'll stitch down this side. Make sure it stays lined up. Then I'll press it open. I'm going to do the same thing with this piece. Line it up right side together. And stitch 1/4 inch. I'm really doing more like a scant 1/4 inch on all these seams. And then I press it open. And there's my heart. These two will go for the next piece. Then I'll take this one and it'll fit right there. So I'll lay it right side together right here, line it up, sew down this side at a scant 1/4 inch. Press it open. There's half of my heart. I'll do the same thing with this one. Line it up and stitch down this side. And it's time for me to change my bobbin, so hang on. All right, we got a full bobbin in and we are ready to go again. So I'm going to stitch down this side. Iron it open. And there's my square. So now what I'll do is I'll take this piece here and I'll trim this. You're gonna have this little excess right here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna trim it as little as I have to, which is right there. I don't want to trim any more than I have to because I want this square as big as I can get it. Then we're going to take this side, do the same thing, trim that, and now they're ready to line up. So once they've lined up, I sew it together. Now what I want to do when I sew this together is I want to make sure that my bottom point matches. So I'll grab my pins and I'll take, where's my ruler? I'll take my points and I'll match them up and I'll pin right there. I'll take this start of the heart down at the center top, line it up, I'll pin it, and then I'll pin this top and bottom, and then I'll sew right here. I'm not stitching over my pins. I've got my pins a little further out, and if they're not out far enough, I just pull them out a little bit like I did that last one. Then I'll take them out, iron it just like it is to press that seam, and then I'll open it. And there's my heart. Now I'm going to do that again. I want 4 of them, so I'm going to do this 3 more times, and I'll come back to you. But first I want to show you, I forgot to show you this. You can piece this one back together again like it was. This was the coordinating pieces. Put it right back to where it was before you cut. And this is the same thing as this, only backwards. So we're going to do the same process. I'm going to sew this to this, then this to this, same thing on this side, and then sew this piece on, sew them together again just like we did a minute ago, and I'll make 4 of them and I'll be back to you. Once I have my squares made, I'll take my first one and I'll measure it, and this is 9 by 9. The next one is 9 by closer to 8.5. 9 by 8.5 and 9 by 9. Once I've measured them all and I know 8.5 is my smallest measurement, I'll come in here and I'll start cutting them down to 8.5 by 8.5. To do so, let me get my ruler. I like working with a smaller ruler when I'm doing something this size. So I want it 8.5 by 8.5. And this side is 8.5. So right here, all I need to do is cut this little piece off right here. Now I need to remember when I'm cutting that I need this heart to be in the center. So if I had to take a 1/2 inch off, I'd take a 1/4 inch off each side. But now this side, I'm just going to cut this little triangle piece off, this little dog ear. And now I need to cut this way. So that's 8.5. This is 9, so I need a little bit up here and a little bit down here. So the bottom has a little bit more room anyway. So I'm going to cut just a little bit off the top. Cut it all the way through. And then I'm going to turn it around, line it up, and I'll cut the 8.5 off here. So that'll be right there. And now there's my 8.5 inch square. I'll do the same thing to the next one. Line it up, and this is 9 by 9. So I'm going to cut a little bit off of this side. Then I'm going to turn it around, line this side up on the ruler, and then come to this side and cut it 8.5. And now this way is 8.5. I need to turn it this way, and it's at 9. So because this is kind of cattywampus right here, I'm just going to straighten it up a little bit on the top. Then I'll flip it this way, and I'll cut it the 8.5 here. I cut more off the bottom just because the bottom had more room to work with than up here. So there's my second one. I'm going to keep doing this with all of them until I get them to 8.5 inches squared. I've got them all 8.5 inch squared. So now I'm just going to sew them together. Now you could sash them, you could do lots of different things with this, but I'm just going to sew them together. It's a door hanger. I just want hearts on the door hanger. So I'm going to take them like this. I don't want my coordinating ones right side by side. So I'll take one of these. Actually, let's take that one. So I got a red and a white, then I'll do a red, then I'll do a white as the background. So I'm going to take these and I'm going to flip them right sides together, and I'm just going to line them up and sew them together. When I get all 4 sewn together, then I will start. Then I'm going to stitch it across here at a 1/4 inch, and then when I get them all sewn together, then we'll come back and we'll do the next step. I now have the 4 squares sewn together. This is about the size I want it for the door hanger, so I'm not making any more. If I were making a quilt, obviously I'd need more, more rows this way, more rows that way, but I'm not. It's just a door hanger for me, so I'm stopping with the 4. Now I've gone down and I've measured these blocks, and so the total measurement was 8.5 wide that we had cut it. So I've got me 2 8.5 inch strips, because I'm going to put a border on mine. You don't have to, but I am. Keeps wanting to fall off the table. Let's do it this way. I'm going to take it and I'm going to lay it across here, and I'm going to pin it in the center, and then I'm going to pin each side, and I'm going to stitch across here at a 1/4 inch. Then I'll do the same thing for the top. Got a string caught. Okay, now I've got my bottom border sewn on. I'll take it and I'll iron it. And that's my bottom. Now I'm going to do the same thing to the top, and then I'll come back and do it to the sides. Now that I've got my top and bottom sewn on, then I'm ready to do my side. And I've already measured, my whole thing is 38.5 inches. And I forgot to tell you earlier, I cut these at 3 inches. You can certainly do any size you wanted to do, but I wanted mine just a little bit wider on the front door, so I went with 3 instead of 2.5. So I've got me a strip that is 38.5 inches long. And I'm gonna take it and lay it down this whole side, and I'm gonna start pinning from the center. So I'm gonna pin it there. I'll probably pin it at every block start. And then I'll do it on this other end. And then I'll stitch down this side at 1/4 inch, and I'll do the same thing to the other side. So now that I have got both sides sewn on for the border, I'll come over here and I'll iron it open. You don't necessarily have to put a border on yours, but I wanted a little bit wider on our shop door, so I added one to mine. Okay, here is my door hanger. And now to piece it together, we're going to put the back and the batting with it and quilt it on the machine here. I can take it in there to a long arm and quilt it, but I can just as easily quilt this one here since it is the smallest size, the smaller size that it is. So let's get our backing and our batting. When you're ready to put your 3 pieces together, your topping, your batting, and your backing, it's called sandwiching a quilt. So when you're ready to do that, what you do is you put your top on the batting and the backing. You'll have the batting and the backing just a little bit larger than the quilt itself, the quilt top, which in my case is the door hanger. And so it's going off each side a little bit larger for the batting and the backing. I've sprayed it down with some June Tailor, which will make it adhere better to the fabric and kind of hold it in place for me. So when I'm putting it on the long arm, I don't need to do that. But when I'm putting it on my regular sewing machine to quilt it, then I do. It's a preference thing, but I do so that it doesn't wiggle around much. There's also an option of curved safety pins you can use, and I'll use that too just to show you how to use that as well. But what I've decided to do on this is I don't want to meander it or anything. I think I'm just going to do diagonal lines both ways. So I'm just going to draw some lines. I'm not making it any certain sizing or anything. I'm just drawing what I want. So I'm going to draw a line here. I'll probably go over about, I don't know, an inch. Draw one there. You can get particular with it and measure it. This one is not that important to worry about to me as far as perfection on measuring. But again, that's another preference thing. So I'm going to keep doing this all the way down this quilt top, and then I'm going to stitch on these lines. And when I get to the end of this, I'm going to come back and do it this way as well. so it kind of looks like a grid. So let me keep going this way and I'll come back when we're ready to sew. I've drawn my lines and I'll show you how these pins work. They're curved pins, safety pins. You just pin them every so often on the quilt so that it doesn't move. I'm not going to do a lot of them because I do have it basted with the basting spray, but that's what you would do with those. So let's take it over to the sewing machine and start sewing these lines. Now that I'm ready to sew it and I've got my pin marks on here, by the way, this is the pin I use, the disappearing ink pin. So I've got it on here and I'm going to start stitching down my lines. I'm going to do this down each line, just making sure that it's still in place. But if you baste it, you shouldn't, or if you've used the pins, whichever way you want to go, it shouldn't move on you. So I'm going to keep going. I'm just going to stitch on all these lines that I drew, and then we'll come back and show you what it looks like. I've stitched all my lines going this way, so all I need to do now is turn it this way and do the same thing going the opposite way. And I've got my lines marked. It's that invisible ink and they're disappearing. Disappearing. So I'm just going to do the same thing I did this way. I'm doing it this way. I'm going to do this all the way down this door hanger, and then I'll come back and we will work on finishing it. We've got it quilted now, so we need to trim it. I'm going to trim it along the edges. And now we're ready to bind it. In order to start binding, I need my binding strips. So I have cut 2.5 inch strips with the fabric, and I'm going to put them right sides together at an angle like this. And then I'm going to stitch across here. Once I stitch that, I'm going to clip off about 1/4 inch from that seam, this excess bulk. And then when I open it, it looks like this. So I'm going to do that for all these strips for this binding, and then we will start putting it on the quilt. We're going to take these strips and we're going to fold them wrong sides together, just so that it looks like this on the outside. We'll do this all the way down this strip. Just iron it in half. And when I get to the end of it, we'll start stitching it on the quilt. To stitch it on the quilt, we'll turn our quilt to the back side and then we'll pin it somewhere along the middle of one of the long sides. Doesn't have to be exact, just somewhere in the middle. And then we'll come down about, I don't know, 6 or 8 inches. Leave that alone, let it just hang. I've got it pinned right now, but just leave it alone. We'll come down a little bit and then we'll start stitching at 1/4 inch. I'll stitch all the way until I get to about 1/4 inch from that end. Once I get to about 1/4 inch from that end, I'm going to cut my thread and I'm going to pull it out, and I'm going to do this. I want the thread, the fabric is going this way. I need it to go this way. So I'm going to take my hand here, I'm going to flip it over. It causes this diagonal line like that in the fabric. You want that. So I'll hold it like that, put my hand there on it to hold it in place, and flip this fabric over my hand. Now I'll take my other hand and hold it down, and now the fabric is going the direction I need it to go. So I'll hold it in place, go over here, and stitch it all the way from the corner. I'll stitch again at 1/4 inch. I'll stop just shy of the edge, maybe 1/4 inch from the edge, and I'll do the same thing. So I'll take it, put my hand here, flip it over. You want this piece of fabric going the same direction that you want it, just the opposite way. So you want it going this way. Flip it over your hand, hold your hand with the other hand, hold the fabric with the other hand, and hold it down. Take it to the machine and start from the very corner, stitching 1/4 inch. Almost to the next edge. I'll stop about 1/4 inch from that edge again, cut my thread, pull it out. Again, the fabric's going this way. We need it to go this way first. So therefore I push it up, and it causes me to have this kind of crease right here, this diagonal line. We want that. So when we get that, we put our hand over it, take the fabric and lay it over your hand, take your other hand, hold it in place along that edge, and now it's going the direction we need it to go. Now we go back over here and we stitch again all the way from the corner. We'll come to that last edge. We'll stop a 1/4 inch shy. Cut that thread. Pull it out. Hold your hand here. Flip it up and to the right. Hold the hand on that crease. Flip the fabric over your hand. Hold it in place. Now you've got this. You do want this little flap sitting here. That's what allows you to turn it from the back to the front. So don't stitch that down, but stitch from the corner. See what I mean right here? This last one we did. It's still stitched from the corner, but it can flop like that. That's going to allow us to turn it to the front of the quilt. Then we keep going, stitching a 1/4 inch. And we're almost to that pin that we started at. So I'm going to cut my thread. Now I am right here. This pin is right here. So I'm going to take and cut off a little bit of extra below that pin. I need at least, I don't know, 3-4 inches down there. Then I'm going to take a piece of my excess binding and cut it off. This binding is 2.5 inches wide, so I need this overlay from here to here. I need it to be 2 inches. I need this overhang. So where we started to where we cut the binding, I need it 2.5 inches because that's how wide my binding is. So when we open this up, we know that from here to here is 2.5 inches. Therefore, instead of measuring, I can just take this and lay it right here. Even with the beginning, lay it on top, make sure it's flat, and then I can just cut where that binding piece I just laid down ends. So now those pieces match up. Take that pin out, take that piece out, and I can open this up and open this up. Lay this one down. Lay this one down right sides together, just like we did when we were making our binding, and I'll stitch across here. Cut my thread. Cut off that excess flap just like we did when we made our binding. And now, when I lay this out, this piece here fits perfect. So all I need to do is stitch this down. I'll go back to where I ended stitching. I'll go, I don't know, 1 inch or 2 back and start back at stitching it down. I'll overlap my stitching here about another 1 inch or 2. Then I can cut it. And now we're ready to flip it to the other side. In order to do the front, I'll flip it to the right side, to the front side. And this binding is around the back. So I need it to come to the front. So I'll pull it to the front. And then I'll just lay it over. I'm not going to pull it because if I pull it, there's nothing in the back and all this in the front. And that's not going to look right. So I just want to lay it out like that and then just flip it over. Then I'll start stitching and I'll stitch it in place. And normally I wouldn't cut my thread here, but I want to show you this. When I get to this corner, this back binding is still back. I want to pull it all out. It's going to come to a corner like that. I can take this and clip this front little part off. Just don't go into the stitch line that you did and get that little bulk out of there. Now it flips up pretty good. I'll stitch this all the way down to here, about a 1/4 inch away from the edge. Actually, I'll probably stop a little higher up. And then I'll pull this side out and do the same thing. This will be stitched down, and this right here, we just flip it up so that it looks like that in the corner. You want it to look like that. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna come back and we're gonna go back to stitching. I'll get to the edge, I'll pull this side up and just lay it on top. Hold it down till I get stitching over it. When my needle's on this piece right here, then I'll flip this sideways and start stitching down this side. I'll pull this side out just like I did the other one. Lay it down. Sometimes you don't have to clip that little corner if it's not real bulky, this white piece, and this one's not, so I'm just gonna leave it alone. Stitch it till I get close to it. Pull this side up and lay it down. Stitch until I get over this piece that's going this way. Then I'll flip my quilt and I'll stitch down this side. So what you're making in the corner looks like that. So we'll keep going until we do all the sides like that, and then we're done. Once you get to the end, you are done. Here it is, and we're ready to hang it on the door. So let's go put it on the door. Now that we're done with it, we're back at the shop and we are going to hang it. So this is what it looks like. What I did was I took a piece of fabric and I sewed it to the back in half so that a dowel will go through this hole right here. And I sewed it at the top in with the binding, or not in with the binding because I forgot, so it's just there. But then I'm going to put this dowel in here. And now we're going to go hang it on the door.
Action.
And there you have it. We're done with our door hanger. So until next time, you guys have a great afternoon. Whatever you're doing, have fun with it, and happy quilting.